Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're talking with one of the U.S. House of Representatives District 1 candidates on the November ballot. This election, Democrat Jim Bryan is challenging incumbent Republican Jeff Miller for the seat. Bryan is a former Army paratrooper who served 3 tours in Vietnam. He received 2 Purple Hearts and a list of other commendations. He's writing about his combat experience and his panhandle youth in a book titled Walking with Heroes. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark has endorsed Bryan's campaign. Bryan's website, bryanforcongress.org, details his background and business experience starting and running a trucking company for 10 years in Arizona before returning to Laurel Hill with his wife and 3 children. Now, in between campaigning, he devotes his time to training his horses, one of whom he rescued from a slaughterhouse. Raised on a farm in Walton County, Bryan says it's time to rejuvenate panhandle industry, agriculture, and economic development. We caught up with Jim Bryan at his home, where he talked about his campaign goals and the challenges of running as a Democrat in this historically Republican district. What made you decide to run for office?
I stepped up at 18. I served 3 tours in combat. I served also in Grenada, and I served a 20-year career in the military. In the paratroopers. That was my job. Too many times someone steps up and everybody puts him down, you know. Hey, I was a Democrat when I was 18. The guy that I sat back to back with, Joe Turner, in combat, we'd sat long nights shivering in the dark during my first combat tour at 18, 19 years old. I didn't lean over him and say, "Hey, Joe Turner, what party are you in?" You know, we were soldiers. What I see and what I see to this day, I see Army green, so I see people. I see everybody. And whenever this situation came up and I saw the mess our country has become, I said, hey, I got to step up. I have to step up again. So I stepped up to serve, and that's what I'm here today to do. Some people say, I've been told, I've been campaigning 12 months, and people come up and shake my hand and say, I really respect your service, but I can't vote for you. You're a Democrat. I said, hold it. How can you tell me you can't vote for me, but yet you respect my service? What I'm supposed to do then is go off to combat and fight, and then come back and keep my mouth shut. Is that what you want me to do? I don't think so. So I'm here to serve. If the voters of this district want me, they got me. But what they do have, they have a combat veteran that's not afraid to step up when the time comes to make some very tough decisions. And I started my leadership career at 18. I led men in combat. Not many people can say that. So here I am, for better or worse, trying to serve my district.
With your background in the military, with your time in Vietnam in combat, how would that impact how you would address issues like Iraq, Afghanistan, using the military in general?
It's very simple. If you want to use me as a combat soldier, you ask me today. My country comes to me and say, First Sergeant Bryan, we want you to serve again. I'll be right there. A lot of veterans would be right there, and we'll go serve. But make sure that you have your crap together when you send me, okay? Because that's a very grave, grave issue to send our young soldiers into war. I spent 3 tours in Vietnam because the thing wouldn't end. It kept going on and on and on and on. I went at 18 and I left at 21. 3 tours. A lot of people say, well, Jim, you're crazy. I said, well, I'm doing what I can do. But it did come a day. And you got to think about that as the voters, too. The voter sends you to war. The voter also sends you home. That's how important your vote is. And a lot of people, they don't think about that. They start blaming the administrations, well, hey, people, you voted them in. So you better point that thing around back at yourself. You sent me to war. It's up to you to bring me home. Congress plays a vital role, as well as the president. The president provides the leadership. Congress provides the leadership as well. And that's another reason I'm running for Congress, to restore that leadership where we don't have a 7% approval rating or a 20%. You know, Congress should have an 80% approval rating, because Congress is supposed to be for all of us, not just a few chosen people.
What kind of immediate differences between you and your opponent would take front and center stage?
There's a lot of difference between me and Mr. Miller. I have nothing against Mr. Miller. I think he's worked admirably in the past 8 years. But I think Mr. Miller is really out of touch on a lot of issues, on quite a few. It's real easy for a Republican or a Democrat in Congress to vote a no. When you vote no, you cover your butt. That's what a lot of them do. If you vote no on things, you don't have to explain yourself. When you really have to explain yourself is when you vote a yes. And when I look at Mr. Miller's record, I see a whole bunch of no votes, nice and cushy. That's not a leadership role. Leadership has to come and take the hard decisions of voting yes and then explaining why. You know, I didn't want the seatbelt law to come into effect, but guess what? I'm glad it did.
What do we need? What do we need here in District 1? I mean,
we need the same thing we've always needed. I have a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old. Where are they going to go for jobs? When I was 15, 16, where could I go for a job? I had to leave here as a young man and go in the military naturally. But after the military, when I come home, there was nothing for me here. I couldn't build a business here. I had to take my expertise I'd gained in the military to another state, Arizona, and I built a trucking company out there. I couldn't build that here. I want to provide the opportunities that I've helped create in another state. I helped the economy there. I was on the Economic Development Commission. I brought in businesses. I brought in jobs. I brought in manufacturing. You know, our base here is service-oriented, tourist, and the military. You know, when I was a kid growing up, Laurel Hill had 2 banks when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Florella, Paxton, they had 4 sewing factories. You know, we had, of course, back in those days, it was called Chemstrand. A lot of my relatives worked in Pensacola, in Chemstrand. We had a thriving port. The Port of Pensacola was thriving. Now, here's what we have in this district. We have the Intercoastal Waterway. We have 2 ports, Pensacola and Freeport. We have all kind of barge traffic that could be. We have an interstate, I-10, and we have rail, CSX. We are ripe for industrial development, and why is it not here?
That's the question.
That is the question. There's a very good question. You know, when I was in Prescott Valley, Arizona, it used to be called Jackass Flats. That was the name of the town. And when I moved there, it was still Jackass Flats. And it was very small, but we had a 200-acre industrial park. And the first thing we did as businessmen, I was on the planning and zoning as well, we says, okay, what are we doing with our industrial park? We put in a sewer, the first thing. We got a sewer, we started with infrastructure, natural gas, sewer, electrical, and we built our infrastructure going into our industrial park. 200 acres of a beautiful industrial park. Rolling prairie, nothing there but coyotes, and the reason it was called Jackass Flats because there were jackasses out there, you know, roaming free.